Dr. Ken Landau. Thanks for watching. Let's talk about Nurtec. Nurtec is an orally disintegrating tablet available for treatment of acute migraine headache with or without an aura. It's not for prevention of headaches. It's for treatment of the acute headaches. It also goes by the name of Romegapen. It's part of a new family, and the family is called the Gepant family. And it's oral small molecules that interrupt the CGRP, that's a chemical the body makes, and it interrupts the ability of that chemical to bind to its receptor. So the drug is known as a CGRP receptor antagonist, and the FDA just approved the first medicine, Ubrelvy, in December of 2019, and now it's approved the Nurtec in February of 2020. It comes as a single tablet, 75 milligram orally disintegrating tablet. It's called an ODT. You're only allowed to take one of them in any given 24-hour time period, and it's not really been shown to be safe in more than 15 headaches a month. Now, the pill comes as an orally disintegrating tablet, comes in a special blister pack. So you clean your hands, you dry your hands, you take the blister pack, and you peel the foil from it. You don't push the pill through the foil. Immediately you place it on your tongue or underneath your tongue, and it disintegrates extraordinarily rapidly within seconds. Then you swallow it. That's it. You don't need to take it with a glass of water. Once it's out of the blister pack, it's not going to be stable for a long period of time. So you don't take it out of the blister pack and stick it in your pocket for use later in the day if you think you're going to have a migraine. It seems that the orally disintegrating tablets reach a peak concentration in the blood faster than the conventional tablets, about 1.5 hours versus a little less than 2 hours. Now, during a migraine, sometimes people complain of nausea, sometimes vomiting. So it can, for those people, be very difficult to take a tablet and then swallow it with some liquid, because there's a very real possibility that they'll vomit the pill. So here you have an orally disintegrating tablet that you don't need to take any extra water. And it has a shorter time to get into the system, and it seems to work just every bit as well as the conventional tablet. Side effects so far, very few. Now, the long-term side effects, actually they studied the conventional tablet, but it doesn't seem that there are any special problems. It causes a little bit of nausea, but not in a significant number of people. Doesn't seem to be associated with anything else. But there's a warning about the drug that it might increase the incidence of hypersensitivity reactions, but it's still less than 1%. Hypersensitivity reactions could occur right away, or they could be delayed. Now, the drug metabolism is such that if you happen to be taking other drugs, it could interact with the way the body handles the Nurtec. So if you take a drug that's a strong inhibitor of something known as 3A4, 3A4 is one of the body's major drug metabolizing enzymes, and if you turn that off by taking some clarithromycin or ketoconazole or itraconazole, that means that the Nurtec is going to build up in the system, maybe to some unhealthy levels, possibly. So it's recommended that you don't take the Nurtec if you happen to be taking one of those medicines. On the other hand, if you're taking a drug that is a moderate inhibitor of the 3A4, maybe you're taking fluconazole or verapamil or Cipro, or maybe you're taking some grapefruit juice, regular basis, well, then it appears that you shouldn't take but one of the Nurtec in 48 hours. So you can't take one the next day if you happen to get another migraine. So how about if you're taking a weak inhibitor? Doesn't seem to make any difference. Now, you could, on the other hand, instead of inhibiting the enzyme, you could turn that 3A4 up. And if you turn the 3A4 up, it's going to more rapidly metabolize the Nurtec, so not much going to be in the system. So that happens when you take rifampin or dilantin or St. John's wort or some of the barbiturates. Going to decrease the amount of the Nurtec in your system by somewhere between 60 and 80%. So don't take it because it's not going to work. On the other hand, if you take a weak or a moderate inducer, haven't been studied, but we assume that there's going to be no significant effect. Now, interestingly, drug is metabolized by two different systems, by the 3A4 and by the 2C9. That's another one of the drug metabolizing enzymes. But it doesn't seem to make much difference whether the 2C9 is working well or isn't working well. We have some other kind of chemicals that are involved in the metabolism and in the concentration, some known as the BCRP or the PGP. And what they do is they would increase the amount of the Nurtec that's in the system. So you probably should avoid it if you happen to be taking medicine like quinidine or carvedilol, or even if you're taking curcumin. So you should avoid the medicine. Well, if you happen to take another medicine for migraine, maybe you're taking the sumitriptan, the Imitrex, doesn't seem to interact with the blood pressure or anything else, so that's good. Pregnancy hasn't been adequately evaluated. We know in animal studies like the rat, it decreases the fetal weight, causes some fetal abnormalities. Doesn't do that in rabbits. In any given pregnancy, we know there's a risk of birth defects, major birth defects, 2 to 4%. And rate of miscarriages between 15 and 20%, migraine headaches don't seem to change those numbers. We don't know whether the medicine will or won't, so it's recommended that you don't take the medicine during pregnancy. Consider the risk-benefit, of course. And in lactation, pretty much the same thing. No significant data at the present time. We don't know about how it's metabolized in the milk, what it does to milk production. We don't know about the effect on the infant. And as a matter of fact, it's not approved for pediatric use. And the geriatric population over 65 doesn't seem to have any special effect, so it can be used just like it would in any adult. If you happen to have some renal disease, mild, moderate, even severe renal disease, it's okay to take the medicine. Doesn't seem to change it all that much, might increase the concentration by about 40%. But if you happen to have end-stage renal disease, we define that as a creatinine clearance of less than 15 milliliters a minute, then it probably is a good idea to avoid the medicine. And same thing with hepatic impairment. If you have severe liver disease, probably don't take the medicine because it would at least double the concentration in the system. Likelihood of overdose with the medicine, very small. How does the medicine work? Well, according to the package insert, it has one single line as far as the mechanism of action. It's a calcitonin gene-related peptide receptor antagonist. That's it. So it does pretty much what I said. It prevents that CGRP that the body makes, especially around the time of a migraine headache, from interacting with its receptor. Now, CGRP is certainly related to migraines, but there's a heck of a lot more to migraines than just CGRP. And that's why the medicine seems to work a little bit, but not as well as you'd like it to work. Well, once you take the medicine, it's going to reach the maximal level in the system in about 1.5 hours. Now, the company says you can take it with or without food, but if you happen to take it with a high-fat meal, it's going to delay the time to the peak plasma concentration by about an hour. And the whole purpose of the orally disintegrating tablet is so that it gets in faster. So if you take it with a meal, you're going to sort of interrupt that. And if you happen to take it with a fatty meal, it's going to decrease the maximum concentration by about 50%. But the company says that doesn't really change the effect of the drug. The bioavailability of the drug is only about 60 to 65%. About 96% is going to float around bound to proteins in the system. It's metabolized mostly by the 3A4, little bit by the 2C9 enzymes. But for that matter, it doesn't all that much make a difference because about 75% is going to be eliminated unchanged from the body. The excretion half-life is about 11 hours. About 3/4 goes out in the stool. About 1/4 goes out in the urine. Mostly as unchanged drug. Don't need to adjust the dose on the basis of age or sex or race or ethnicity or weight or the 2C genotype. Good news is it's not carcinogenic. It certainly doesn't cause mutations. And doesn't seem to interact with fertility, although at high doses in rats, it does lead to uterine atrophy. Well, the clinical effects of the drug. Studied anywhere from 10 milligrams all the way up to 600 milligrams. And it was found that the 75, 150, and 300 milligrams seemed to perform better than placebo. So in the early preliminary studies, it was shown that the rate of being pain-free of your migraine at 2 hours after you took the medicine, about 30% with the 75 milligram, 150 milligram, 300 milligram. But if you took the placebo, only about 15%. Now, there was a study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, looked at people who had at least 1 year history of migraines, average age about 40, typically with migraines about 90% occurred in women. People had almost 3 moderate to severe migraines every single month. They only treated 1 migraine in each patient. So we don't know what the second migraine or the third migraine, fourth migraine, how they would respond. Well, the treatment was carried out at 49 different centers in the United States, and clinics and institutions and private offices. In entry into the study required headaches of less than 15 days a month during the past 3 months. People could receive preventive therapy, but they couldn't receive preventive therapy that interacted with the CGRP. They couldn't have any unstable medical conditions. They couldn't be alcoholic. They couldn't be drug abusers. They kept an electronic diary. They had to have at least a moderate to a severe migraine. They could only take 1 dose of the Nurtec. If they needed some other kind of therapy after 2 hours, a rescue therapy, they could take a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, Naprosyn or something like that. Could take acetaminophen, could take an antiemetic. They could not take a drug like a triptan, like Imitrex, for at least 48 hours. What was the end result of the study? Well, they looked at 2 major primary endpoints. One was being pain-free at 2 hours, no headache pain at all at 2 hours, and the other free of the most bothersome symptom at 2 hours. Most bothersome symptoms with migraine are either the photophobia, the phonophobia, the light and the sight hurts your eyes, the sound hurts your ears, have nausea. Well, what was the likelihood of success? In the New England Journal, they looked at the incidence of being pain-free at 2 hours, and they found it was a smidge under 20%, 19.6%. With the drug, on the other hand, the placebo, that caused pain-free at 2 hours, 12%. So I needed to treat 13 people to get 1 of them significantly improved. Let me repeat that. The likelihood of being pain-free with the Nurtec was a little less than 20% versus 12% with the placebo. Now, when you combine the other major study, you find that the outcome in the Nurtec group is about the same. So about 21% seemed to be pain-free at 2 hours. About 11% of the people receiving the placebo, again, pain-free at 2 hours. But that's just another way of saying that about 78 or 79% of the people taking the Nurtec were not pain-free at 2 hours. If you look at the people taking the placebo, 89% of them were not pain-free. And here's the graphic illustration where the blue represents the percentage of the people who were pain-free at 2 hours, the orange not pain-free at 2 hours. Free of the most bothersome symptom at 2 hours. That was the other major endpoint. Well, in the group taking the Nurtec, about 35% free of the photophobia, the phonophobia, or the nausea. 35%, versus about 27% with the placebo. So still had to treat 12 people to benefit 1 person. So if we look at the secondary outcomes, pain relief at 2 hours. So you went from moderate to severe intensity to either no pain or mild pain. In the group receiving the Nurtec, it was 59%. Group receiving the placebo, it was 43%. Now, if we look at the sustained likelihood, the likelihood of having sustained pain-free between 2 hours and 24 hours, with Nurtec, it was about 13.5% versus about 5.5% in people taking placebo. So still, you had to treat about 13 people to benefit 1 person, and here's what that looks like, where the blue represents the people who were pain-free between 2 and 24 hours after the Nurtec or after the placebo. The orange, people who were not pain-free. Well, if we look at the use of rescue medicine within 24 hours after taking the medicine, with Nurtec it was about 14%. It was double that with placebo. Well, what was the likelihood of pain relapse sometime between 2 hours and 48 hours after you took the medicine? Well, interestingly, it was about 50-50. Here's the graphic representation. So there doesn't seem to be much difference. So unfortunately, we don't have any active comparator that was evaluated. So they didn't test it against aspirin or acetaminophen or naproxen, didn't test it against the sumitriptan. They only tested it in one migraine headache, and they didn't enrich the population for people who might be at extra risk, say people who have cardiovascular disease. Interestingly, there was a study, and it was done in 2014 by Bristol Myers Squibb and by researchers from UC San Francisco and the Mayo Clinic in Arizona. And they looked at the likelihood of being pain-free at 2 hours after taking Nurtec at a dose of 75 milligrams, 150 milligrams, or 300 milligrams, found it was about 30%, but found it was 35% if the people were given sumitriptan, Imitrex. With placebo, it was only about 15%. Now, the studies that led to the drug approval, and we always like studies not to be too closely held. We like them to be at arm's length. We like the drug companies not to have too much to do with them. Well, what was the likelihood that the drug company had something to do with these studies? Well, they actually sponsored the trial. They supplied the drug. They reviewed the trial design. They collated the data. They performed the data management and the analysis. And the report was even written by a writer who was funded by the drug company. Two of the doctors who were affiliated with papers, the two papers, New England Journal and Lancet, they happened to be university professors, UC San Francisco, London, and also at Montefiore Hospital in New York. But interestingly, the second author in the Ubrelvy paper happened to be one of the major authors on the Nurtec paper. These are two competing drugs. And of the 10 authors that were listed on the Nurtec paper in the New England Journal of Medicine, 8 of them worked for the drug company. We had the chief scientific officer, the chief executive officer, the chief of development for neurology, the VP of chemistry, R&D, the executive director of clinical operations, and the chief of portfolio strategy and development. And one of the authors, Dr. Lipton, he happened to be the same gentleman who was on the Ubrelvy paper, and he has a couple conflicts of interest that were reported in the New England Journal, and you can see a few of them that are listed here. Well, in the paper in the Lancet, the chief author happened to be the chief development officer in neurology for the company. And the rest of the people who were listed were basically the same. They swapped out a BA and an MA and put a Master of Public Health in the group, but that doesn't make any difference. So here we have the company basically providing the information. Wouldn't it be nice, like they do in some of the other scientific studies, to have the drug studied by people who don't have any vested interest in the drug? And especially with migraine. Migraine is a very important condition. Migraine affects about 1 billion people in the world between the ages of 25 and 55. Negatively impacts on the quality of life and professional activities, social activities, academic level. About 75% of the people or more who have migraines are women, especially during the reproductive years. We have other treatments available for migraine headaches, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and aspirin, acetaminophen. Then we have the triptans. Triptans are widely used. These are drugs like Imitrex, but sometimes people can have contraindications. They shouldn't use them, maybe because they have some kind of cardiovascular disease, heart disease, maybe they had a stroke. We also have some biologics that can be used as preventive therapies that also worked on the CGRP family. It seems the triptans, they're the most widely used drugs, but some people don't respond, and sometimes you get a recurrence, or sometimes people have adverse effects, and as I mentioned, sometimes people have reasons why you shouldn't take the drugs. These are drugs like Emerge or Maxalt or Imitrex or Zomig or Relpax, a lot of drugs in the family. And if you don't seem to respond to one, you could try another, because it seems that there is a little bit of difference, so that some people just respond to one and not to another. They work on the serotonin metabolism as opposed to the CGRP metabolism. And it seems that the triptans, the likelihood of being pain-free at 2 hours, somewhere between 12 and 40%. Well, sumitriptan can cause some vasoconstriction. That's why you have to be a little bit careful if you have some vascular disease. But the Nurtec doesn't seem to do that. Well, the drug is manufactured. The drug is basically the result of Biohaven Pharmaceuticals of New Haven, Connecticut. They're also studying the drug for trigeminal neuralgia and maybe even as a preventive for migraine. They bought the drug. They bought the worldwide rights for the drug from Bristol Myers Squibb. And then they were the people who got the idea to put the orally disintegrating tablet form of medicine. So that was pretty good. That was a nifty idea. And then they formed a subsidiary to sell it in China and the Asia-Pacific region. So CGRP is getting to be a very interesting family of drugs. We know that other drugs interact with the CGRP to prevent migraine. Adjuvant or Aimovig or Emgality. Well, this whole family, the Gepant family, started off in around 2010, 2011. Actually, there was a drug called Talgepant. And Talgepant was a drug that was made by Merck that seemed to have phenomenal reports of success in treating migraine headache, until all of a sudden it was taken off of the study shelves in 2011 because in a phase 2A trial, before it got to FDA for approval, it was shown that it had some liver toxicity. So, does the medicine really work? And the answer is yes, indeed. There is a statistically significant improvement with the medicine, but some authors from the Danish Headache Center and Brigham and Women's at Harvard say, you know, you can get some of these statistical significant findings that really don't have much clinical meaning. And you saw the graphs, the pie charts. Well, how much does all of this cost? Costs a heck of a lot of money. So it comes as a dose pack. There are 8 tablets, 8 of these orally disintegrating tablets. The price cash right now is about $1,000. With a coupon from GoodRx, it's about $850. Basically the same price as Ubrelvy. That's the first Gepant that was approved. It was approved in December of 2019, the Nurtec, February of 2020. Compare the about $800 to $1,000 price tag, say, to sumitriptan. You could buy the sumitriptan. You could get 9 tablets of 100 milligrams. You could buy them for cash, somewhere around $50 to $150 with a coupon from GoodRx, somewhere between $10 and $22. But if you go to Walgreens, it would be about $77. So you could get the pill for an average of around $2 a pill. So is an average of $100 a pill better? Well, you have to decide. So there you have it. That's Nurtec. It's another treatment for acute migraine. It belongs to a new family called the Gepants. It's a CGRP receptor antagonist. It prevents the CGRP, a chemical that's used in migraines, from activating its receptor. Works for some people, but not for all. Overall, it's not really a spectacular success. Does it have a role in migraine? Yeah, it probably does. Small role. Is it a preventive? No. It's a treatment for acute migraine, but it's extraordinarily expensive, especially compared to the benefit that the overwhelming majority of people will receive. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend. Consider subscribing so you'll be notified as we post new videos. I appreciate your interest. I'm Dr. Ken Landau.